Sorry, April. Are you here? Sorry about that. I was having a powwow with Lynn.
That's okay. Can you hear me and see me?
I can. I hear you and see you. And those pool sticks on the wall back there. Whenever you're ready, let me know.
Oh, okay. All right. So I need to show my screen, right?
Yep.
Before we let people in, I want to make sure it works. I need a Chrome tab. And
We're already in.
Oh, hi, people. All right. Can you see it?
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to leave it in that view and toggle between. Will that work?
Yep. Well, if they want to look at your screen, they can just double click on the video on that on your screen share, and it'll make it big. Also, anybody that's listening, if you want to make the screen a little bit larger, up at the very top next to the time left in the example, next to the number of people that are currently attending, there's an arrow to the right. You can close the chat. It'll make the screen a little bit bigger.
Oh, I didn't know that. But I want everybody to use the chat. So don't close the chat.
Don't close the chat. But you can still just double click on the screen share. It'll make it bigger.
That's my interactive thing, Brian, is the chat. So I'm going to get started because it's 10 o'clock.
All right.
Does it work?
Oh, we're ready.
So before we go, do people just automatically come in, or do you have to click them to let them in?
No, they automatically come in. I only click to let I click to let them in if they want to share their screen or audio.
Awesome. Okay. It's 10 o'clock. So one of my new personal goals is to begin and end on time, because I'm really bad about that. I get too perfectly present. So I'm going to try to start and end on time today. Actually, I'll end a little early. So I'm a teacher. My name is April, and I am here today to talk about artificial intelligence in elementary school. And I'm here with Brian Cox. So Brian, do you want to say hello to anyone who might not know of your celebrity yet, which is probably unheard of, but
far from celebrity. But how you doing? I'm the Department of Ed CS specialist in Georgia, and I'm here to support April. And I love the idea of AI. I'd like to get this in Georgia. We're working on it.
Yes, we are. So here's how it's going to work. Everyone needs to open up my slide deck. So you'll see on my slide, it says it's a bit.ly link, and Brian is going to paste it into the chat every now and again. I put it on every slide. So this is your copy of the slide deck, and it's at bit.ly/ and then I observed capitalization requirements. So it's capital AI, capital GT, capital C constellations, and the number 4 in between. So it's AI 4 GT constellations. And so this is your slide deck of the resources. It's a hot link, a hyperdoc slide deck. And hopefully what's going to happen, Brian and I have been laughing because in this world of digital learning, what you get really good at doing is something else while you're supposed to be like at a Zoom meeting with your boss or, principal or whatever. So you can keep a tab open and check email. You can keep a tab open and play solitaire. I don't know, whatever. So I want you to do that. So I am actually wanting you to have another tab open with my slide deck, and I'm wanting you to click around and play. So the way that I'll make this interactive is when I get to a slide that has multiple linked resources, I want you to click on the one and explore the one that you think is most appealing to you. And if you're muted and your video is off, then you can just play and I'll talk, and you can mute me if you want, or you can come back and I'll tell you a little bit about the thinking behind it. So what I'm going to start with is if you look down in the notes of this particular slide, the first slide, you will see that there are 2 links at the bottom, and one of them is called Daddy's Car, and it was the first pop song that was recorded in AI, and I don't know if I can play that and you can hear it. But the other one I learned about at ISTE, and it is a deck that it's called Break Free, and it's a musical artist who actually uses AI to make her music. So what I do with those is I play them for my kids, and it gets into a discussion about artificial intelligence that makes art, whether or not they should make art, and if they're any good at making art. And I think these two songs are amazing. I was going to see, Brian, if you could play them for people to hear them in the background, because I know you said that you do that sometimes. But I wasn't sure that would work, so I thought that might be out of my tech grade. But those are really cool songs. One of them is patterned after the Beatles, the Daddy's Car. I didn't do a lot of research to see if it's the first recorded AI song, but it might be. So we're going to go on to the next slide. And this is a little interactive activity. So what I'd like everybody to do is in the chat, list all the electronic devices that you might use in a typical day. So we'll start with that. So if you'll just list in the chat, what are the things that you use electronic devices? So, and we're going to try to come up with a list. So for me, I've already used Alexa today. Phone, TV, computer. Yeah. Oh, a Roomba. How cool. Oh, and a smart TV. Yeah, Alexa and Siri. Okay, so now what I want you to do is, what ones of those do you think have AI in them? And what is the AI capability? So for example, for me, I would say Alexa does voice recognition. Oh, OnStar. So Ruth says all of hers do. Facial recognition. Oh, you have a new iPhone. What's Bixby? I don't know about Bixby, Nakima.
Bixby is another AI.
If you want.
Yeah, that's Samsung's AI.
Oh, I learned something today. That's why I present, because I was learning. Yeah, Google Maps, absolutely. And the interesting thing, too, is when I have a discussion like this with my students, if I don't know, I just say, really? How do you know? They learn that my favorite word is because, and I make them make their thinking transparent. So the big thing in my classroom is my kids need to think. I don't really care what they learn. I know that sounds terrible. Because I think everything we learn is going to change as the future goes on. There's some basic fundamentals you have to have, reading and writing and math. But I think that a lot of the things that we're learning now are going to change. So I really want them to think. So I say to them, what do you think? And then they tell me. So I don't want to be telling them what they think isn't right. So I usually just ask a lot of questions like, why do you think that? And you explain that to me, or, that doesn't sound right. Can you show me how you learned that or where you got that? So I love that idea that you can get a whole bunch of kids talking about AI, and you'll find out what they have in their classroom. So one of the things that's I'm finding a lot of my students have smart devices and they're on the internet. So we talk a lot about the Internet of Things. And so I explained to them that I have a lamp that is not a smart device, but it has a little white box that makes it smart. So one of the things I think that kindergarten, first grade, second grade, they need to understand that the Internet of Things is what is making so much AI. And so I think that it's really important for kids to have a discussion about all the things in their life where AI is affecting them. And there's a lot of things we don't think about that if you point them out to kids, it's kind of important. So what about spam filters, right? So that happens in the background of what we're doing every day. We're not even aware that that's an AI application. Also, the little suggestions at the bottom of your email, they will change over time because Google learns what it is you normally say. And it was really funny because one of my kids went through a phase where on his own personal Gmail, which he did not have, and I did not know that he had that because he was not 13, he would start changing what he said to be sort of snarky and to see if he could get the AI hacked so that it would start being a little bit snarkier with his responses, like, I don't care, whatever you think or whatever. So that was kind of an interesting. So if you go on to the next slide, the reason why I'm involved in AI at all is because I'm part of the AI for K-12 working group. And so it's really an honor to be in this group. It's national and even international people that are working towards making guidelines for artificial intelligence. And I keep bugging Brian because I really want Georgia to be the first state to roll out AI standards as part of their CS initiative. Because I think if you're not already talking about artificial intelligence, you're already behind. Some people are afraid of AI and some people are curious to see what will happen, but they don't want to be on the cutting edge. I want Georgia to make a statement. I want us to say that we agree that it's an entitlement of every student to learn about artificial intelligence. And so this AI for K-12 working group, I'm part of the K2 grade band. So there's university people, there's industry, business, ISTE, CSTA is highly invested in it. So it's a steering committee made up of university researchers that sort of drive the process. And it's sponsored by AAAI, which is the Association for Advancement of Artificial Intelligence, which has been around since 1979, CSTA, and Carnegie Mellon University, which if you yesterday went to the Calypso session to write a program, Dave Turetsky's fascinating and fabulous, and he's such a good teacher. Yeah, Brian's nodding. He just is amazing, and he sort of guides us, and he's at Carnegie Mellon. And so they really have been super supportive. NSF gave an iTest program grant to it. But we're now in our second year of the work, and we're finishing out the actual guidelines. And so Dave has been instrumental in making those teacher-friendly, as well as important so that they are connected across the K-12 spectrum. So I'm involved in the K2 band, and that's what I'm going to talk about today, is what little people should and could do with artificial intelligence. So if you'll go on to the next slide in the deck, we're going to talk a little bit about your why. One of the big reasons why I think you need to incorporate AI into what you're doing is because it's a tremendous impact on our students' lives, and they need to know that. It's the future of business and daily interaction with our phones, with our computers, with our home devices is going to continue to drastically change. So we, in that first activity, made a whole list of the things that we've used, and that's only going to get more prolific. I think future generations, how they shop, how they drive, I think even this pandemic has shown us that there's really big impacts of our behavior, and artificial intelligence is watching our behavior. And so I think our kids need to be aware of that, not to scare them or anything, but just to make them aware. Rachel Dean Poff wrote an article, and she says there's 4 regular areas, and there are many areas, but think about your smartphone. Caitlin Dooley is going to talk at lunch. I can't wait to hear her. She was my PhD advisor. And one of the things she said that was so profound at one of our CS advisory board meetings was that within minutes of being born, most babies come in touch with their first CS device, and it's AI. Anybody know what it is? Put it in the chat.
I know.
I know you do. I'll give you a hint. It's facial recognition or object recognition. Yep. Yeah, we take a picture of the baby. So somebody's there taking a picture of the mom and the baby, and they're using AI because their phone is zoning in on the object, which is the baby, and then facial recognition. So within minutes of you being born, you already have a digital footprint that includes an AI application. And I just think that that's really an amazing and powerful statement. And I think we need to all be teaching our students about AI. So there's music and media, smart home devices. Artificial intelligence is also in online things. So your spam filter is using AI. Your bank is using AI. There's so many things that we don't think about in a day that are heavily reliant on artificial intelligence. And I think we're remiss. You know, again, I go back to Miles Berry, who said that it's an entitlement of every child to know about artificial intelligence. So I think we owe it to ourselves to teach it to our kids. And so here's a slide of several reasons why you might want to teach AI. So I'm going to give you a second to look at it, and then maybe we'll have some brave people to volunteer to come on stage, and Brian can let you share what your why is, or what your why would be for teaching AI, and why you selected it. Brian and I found out we have the same why.
Fancy that.
Do we got anybody volunteering, Brian?
Not yet. I think they're still reading and building up their courage. We got some brave people on here, I know. I spoke with a couple of them yesterday, and
I think Lily looks like she might volunteer.
Lily is quite brave, and so is David. He knows exactly what he wants.
They're just laughing. Yes, absolutely.
You choose 2, yes, so you can. Yes. I chose 3, so.
Oh, good, Sarah. Oh, Sarah, hi, Sarah. Oh,
okay, so Sarah, click the button to say share your audio and video. There we go. Give it a second. All right, Lily, we'll pull you up as well.
Cool.
I think it takes a second for somebody to pull in.
Okay.
I'm clicking plus. Oh, there's Sarah. Hey, Sarah.
Hello. So what I always say is I teach AI because people are afraid of Terminator, which is not a thing that's really happening. It's with the current technology we have, we're nowhere near building a general human AI that can drive a car and shoot you and do backflips.
Right.
But people are not afraid of algorithmic bias. And when AOC said, no, we should not be using these AI systems in policing, people said, no, algorithms are not biased. And we should be afraid of algorithmic bias, which is a thing which is happening right now. So what I'd say is I want people to be afraid of the right things and excited about the right things. So what is AI actually good at and what is it not good at? I want basically everyone to know that.
That's excellent. I'm still afraid of the Terminator, but I'm learning.
I chose 2. I chose the citizenship and civic engagement and school reform and improvement. And I actually had this conversation with my kids as part of a roundtable discussion, and something that they came up with. So they're 9 and 10, and they said, well, if humans are creating the AI software, what's going to stop the AI from making the same mistakes that we programmed into it? And that was something they came up with on their own. So they were already hitting on this idea of implicit bias in the algorithmic structures, right, that create these things. And I was shocked because I didn't guide that. They just kind of spiraled into it. So it's interesting that even children can recognize this at such a young age if you give them that kind of platform to discuss it. And they said, well, so then, because one of the kids goes, so if they learn from what they interact with in the world, the idea of that deep learning, the machine learning, they're what if they just keep learning the wrong things? And if they get smarter than us faster, then they got scared, which I didn't mean for them to be scared, but because that's not my job, go home and be my teacher scared me. But then they said, that kind of scares me because if they get smarter than us and they only learn the wrong things over time because the humans made the mistakes, then what's going to happen to us? So that was interesting. It was kind of a little bit of social commentary, how does that evolve over time, right? And that was very eye-opening considering they're 9 and 10. So that was very interesting.
Yeah.
And they also
it really is interesting. When you ask little kids what they think, I don't know about this, but they tell me all the time, nobody else asks me what I think. They tell me what to think or they tell me what to do, but nobody asks me what I think.
Yes.
And if I want you to think about it, I'll tell you what to think about it.
And it was really interesting, April, because they drew on WALL-E, the movie, a lot. Yes. They're are we going to be boneless one day? Is that what's going to happen to us as a byproduct of this stuff? And I said, evolution takes a lot of time. I was I don't know if we're going to lose bones, guys. I was but we'll lose other things. And then
it's interesting because Brian and I were talking about RY, and Angela's kind of asked a question about that. So Brian, do you want to share RY, because you very eloquently did that, and it sort of goes into what Angela's questioning.
Just responding to her.
Thank you, Lily.
Thank you.
You and I have to get together.
Yes.
So, and then I asked the same question, can I have multiple whys? Because I believe in technical solutions to social challenges. So the technical innovation that component. That was my why. But because I believe technical innovation leads to strong citizenship and economic and workforce development, like I believe technical innovation feeds into citizenship and social justice and equity. Like I believe that the technical advancements that we build and generate will ultimately lead us to being better citizens, to a stronger society. We have to think about and reflect on our implicit biases and address our social justice and whatnot. So one leads to the other, really leads to all the other ones, but definitely the innovation leads to the others.
Yeah, and one of the things that's interesting is with my fifth graders, I actually show them these, and I ask them which one do they think is most important. And in this case, I'm asking them actually to pick one. And in the end, our fifth grade theme is interdependence, about how all things are kind of interrelated. And at the end, what they come up with is these are all related. Like you can't pull one out without, affecting some of the others. So if you look in the notes section, I've given you my why. So basically, I agree. I think technological, social, and scientific innovation is where it needs to be. But I agree that we have to, with Sarah, we have to really make sure our kids understand what it is they need to be afraid of. And they need to be afraid of the fact that humans are going to be teaching machines. And we have to make sure that what we're teaching them is what we want them to learn. And that's the most important thing about it. So we're going to go on to the next slide. And this is a poster. It's sort of my claim to fame with the AI for K-12 working group, because they came up with these 5 big ideas. And I was musing about, wouldn't that be great if we had a big poster? We could put the poster up in our classrooms. And, primarily because I can't remember the 5 big ideas. I have to look at the poster too. So it became something where now every time when they go, in April de Janeiro ask us to make this poster out of my own selfless interest, yes. But it's a great graphic. And I love the design of it, which I had nothing to do with, by them putting societal impact in the center. And so it's in my classroom, and kids will actually go up and point to it when they're talking about AI. They'll also go up and just look at it and then ask questions about it. Sort of like in the perception where there's a confidence interval. What does that mean? Why does that say object there? So if you look at it, there's 5 big ideas. Big idea 1, what I want little people K-5 to understand is that humans have senses. Computers have sensors. I use robotics at every grade level, and some of them are not AI, some of them are. And I want my kids to understand that a sensor on a machine is totally different from the senses that I have as a human. And I teach my kids that there are 7 senses, not just the 5 senses. They learn about the 5 senses in their health class. So in addition to sight, smell, taste, hearing, and touch, I want them to know that human beings have vestibular sense, which means that I'm balanced and I can move around in various ways. And then I'll show them a Boston Dynamics clip of the robots there that look so icky. And partly because that robot doesn't have a vestibular sense. It doesn't have the ability to balance. I'll talk a lot with my first graders about how balance is a foundation and you develop it over time. And then I also ask them the joke about, what has 4 legs, then 2 legs, then 3 legs. And then we talk about how as you get older, you lose your balance. So that is a sense that comes and goes over the span of your life. You're moving if you're in an elevator, right? A robot doesn't have the ability to do that. So if it's in an elevator, it doesn't have any way to know that it's moving. Same thing with the 7th sense, which is proprioception. And I learned this from my friend Charlotte Dungan, who's also presenting. She's from North Carolina. She's fabulous. Like Jared O'Leary joined Charlotte Dungan as like my personal heroes of teaching. But she told me about proprioception. And that is the sense of knowing your body position in space. Like if I want to go touch my nose, right? Which is what sense gets messed up when you do a sobriety test. You don't have good proprioception when you're inebriated. When you clap your hands, you know how hard you need to do it. You don't smash them together because you know that hurts. So yeah, there you go, Brian. So proprioception, it's like a pencil, right? If I go to use a pencil, I don't always press down too hard and break the lead. I've learned through the sense of proprioception how hard. Machines don't know that. Robots cannot do that. Carnegie Mellon a long time ago had this Oreo eating robot named Herb. I don't know, anybody put in the chat if you know about Herb. If not, you need to Google Herb. But what Herb was trying to do was to split the Oreo apart to have just cookie and just cream, and to settle the age-old debate of which was better, the cookie or the cream. And Herb is hysterical. I think Herb left Carnegie Mellon and went to Washington State with his researcher. But I show them Herb, and then I bring in Oreos, and of course we talk about how we're able to break them apart. But in Herb's early days, he just annihilates these Oreo cookies. And it's over time that Herb learns how much force it takes to actually take apart a gentle thing like an Oreo and then to scrape that cream off of it. So I think that, big idea 1 is really important in elementary school. I spend a lot of my time on big idea 1. Big idea 2 kind of naturally happens. We make representations in elementary school all the time. If you're a first or second grade teacher and you're teaching about community, the first thing you have kids do is draw a representation of their community. Anything you can't bring in the class, you make a map of. We can make a map of all kinds of things. And so as kids get older, we make more sophisticated maps. So our sophisticated maps might look like flowcharts or trees, which is very much like the representations that AI agents make. With my 4th graders, I do a map. They make a representation or a map, and then they have a robot, Cosmo, that navigates that map. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later. We know about Google Earth, right? That's using AI to make maps. We also, most of the kids will know about Waze or Google Maps, and they know that there's a little car that drives around on the map. So that's a great way to show them how AI makes a representation. Big idea 3, what I really want kids to know is that machines learn differently from humans. And we're going to talk about some activities later on that exemplify that. But human beings learn uniquely, and we have some great gifts that computers will never have. And so one of the things that's I show them is a simulation, which is down in the notes. It's called survivalofthebestfit.com. So you can go down to the notes and click on that, and you can hire people. You can try to hack it and hire the best people. You can hack it and say, I'm going to hire all orange people, or I'm going to hire all blue people. And it won't work, because when they get to the part of the simulation, they pull in data from existing hiring. And what do you suppose existing hiring does to all of your efforts to hire a diverse workforce? Sabotages it. So one of the big things with big idea 3 that I'll talk with my kids about is if we're using existing data for something to train a machine, we may not get the results that we want. One of the things I just sort of set them up by saying, let's make an AI device that will be able to tell us who could be the next president of the United States. And my 3rd graders love this because they're learning about the branches of government. And so we get all the pictures of all the presidents, and we train our AI with using all these pictures of the president. And then at some point, somebody realizes that there are no women, very few people of color, and our AI is going to never, ever pick a woman as president with any value of confidence. Another thing is that they're probably never, ever going to pick someone of dark skin, because even the one president that we had is a light-skinned Black person. And in many of the pictures, my kids would say he doesn't even look like he's an African-American. So it was very interesting for my kids to actually talk about how you would train an AI device using existing data, and to realize that it would be very hard to come up with something that was not biased and not a good way. Big idea 4. This is why I really think that we need to make sure that our students realize that the whole point of AI is for it to interact with humans, and that human interaction is what we're basing our AI upon. So that's sort of like the foundational thing for big idea 4. Also, we need to be aware of how invasive it is. And I use that term invasive purposefully. It is invasive. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing like an invasive species, but it is invasive. And so kids need to be aware of it. Adults need to be aware of it. But, by teaching kids, we need to be aware of it too. And then big idea 5, I like it that that's in the center of the wheel. And the reason why I do is because I think that big idea 5 touches all of the others. So I think what Sarah was saying about what we need to pay attention to is we need to be paying attention to the societal impact of the decisions that we make when we allow artificial intelligence to do work for us. And that's basically what I want my kids to know, is that AI is great and it helps us do work, but we need to make sure that we're paying attention that it's doing it in the right way and it's not unduly biasing the decisions that it's making. I don't know if I need to stop for questions, Brian. Do we have anything we need to, or should I keep going?
We're good. Somebody asked about are there curriculum, and I directed them to the AI for K-12 stuff. So I think we're good.
Okay. So before I leave societal impact, the last thing I want to say is there's an idea that I talk about with my kids all the time called the uncanny valley. And it's this idea of whether or not we are attracted to or repulsed by artificial intelligence agents. And one of the things I like to show them, and this is down in the notes, there are several links down in there, is Sophia, the robot citizen. She was a project from a group out of England. And the first conversation I had with Dave Turetsky was about how irresponsible it was for me to talk about her in front of little kids. And what was interesting is the same thing Lila said, which was the little kids were like, whoa, wait a minute, hold on. Wait, this isn't right. This isn't fair. So they immediately nailed the exact things that Dave was pointing out to me, sort of mislead the public that, this is not necessarily a good thing for her. The kids wanted to know why she didn't have hair. That was their biggest thing, because she is an Android type AI, but she doesn't have hair. And I said, I don't know, what do you guys think? And they were like, maybe if they needed to fix her, they didn't want to have to remove the hair. And then another kid said, maybe they didn't want her to look too human. Maybe they wanted to remind us that she wasn't human. But that uncanny valley, that idea of whether or not you like it or not, I put on during digital learning a link to a current issue where they had a doctor coming in on an iPad that was mounted on one of the Boston Dynamics Spot robots. And I just put it into Google Classroom Stream and asked, creepy or cool. And most of the kids wrote back both sides of the coin, that it was creepy, and it would be creepy to have your doctor show up on that weird dog looking robot. But it would also be cool because then you were safe and your doctor was safe. So just asking them to think about things like that, I think, is super important. And the other thing, too, is there's this whole idea about as we market new AI, how do we test it? So the societal impact of testing autonomous cars or robots in there's a lot of robotics in assisted living and working with elder care people. How do we do that in a safe way? So those are things that I think kids should be wrestling with, and they can come up with some really cool answers to it as well. So I'm going to go on now to the next part, which is a few slides that are linked resources. So if you're on the page that says go to resources for K2, these are the things that I do, and you're welcome to click around on them in any order. And while you're clicking around, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about how and why I use them. So I love the book Wild Robot. I don't know if anybody uses Wild Robot with their students, but I love Wild Robot. Do we need to stop for Greg? Come on, Greg.
I'm asking. He wants to get on the screen. I'm wondering if you have a question.
Okay. So Wild Robot is a great book. It's about a robot that crashes and its crate lands on an island, and the island is uninhabited except for a bunch of animals. And what I want my littles, my K1, 2 kids, to really unpack and think about is this real or is this fiction? Because I think AI fact and AI fiction is really important for little kids. Sarah talked about how people are afraid of the Terminator. Well, the Terminator doesn't exist, right? I have an Alexa in my classroom, and she can barely even answer a question. I doubt she can take over the world. And so my kids kind of get by the end of the year that they're saying that too, like, well, Alexa can't even answer a question. How is she going to take over the world? So I think it's really important for kids to be thinking about what's AI fact and what's AI fiction. And the Wild Robot book does that really great. It's all about machine learning. It's how I sort of bring up the idea of machine learning. Could this machine really be learning on a deserted island with no internet connection? It's how I bring in the Internet of Things. I didn't talk about how that robot doesn't have the machine learning that it needs. And as we go through the book, we talk about those kinds of things. The other thing I talk about is Roz is treated by the animals kind of badly. And it's really funny. My second graders were just appalled at the way the animals treated Roz. And at the same time, the AI for K-12 working group is having a conversation about, do you need to be polite to your AI? and someone wrote in the reply, well, you wouldn't be kind to your dishwasher. Like you wouldn't say, thank you, dishwasher, for cleaning my dishes. But why would we then say, thank you, Alexa? Which I don't know if you've noticed, but if I thank my Alexa, she replies sort of nicely. And if I just say, shut up, she often just is not even going to reply. And so the really funny thing about it was that what was happened at the end in my classroom, and my second graders, they were like, well, you really are a kind person more for yourself and the way you want to think about yourself as a kind person. Because even if someone is mean to you, if you're kind back to them, then you can think you're a good person because you're kind. And Dave Turetsky wrote, well, if you're mean to your Alexa, then you look like a jerk to other people. And so I shared that with them, and they were like, yeah, see, we're just like the Carnegie Mellon researcher guy, because we know that we have to be kind to our AI. So it was all about habit. You want to get into the habit of being kind. And so being kind to your AI is good. In the book, Wild Robot, just so you'll know, spoiler alert, the animals do actually begin to like Roz and things do settle down. But the other thing, too, that's interesting is if you click on Mystery Animal, that is a Google experiment. And my kids do not like it. It is a voice AI. So what you do is you speak into a little microphone. You enable your microphone, you speak into it. That guy is snarky. He will say to the kids something like, how should I know? Or how the heck should I know? And my kids are like, oh, he's not nice. And so it's very interesting to see what they think. They like Akinator much better. They are not able to stump Akinator. And I told them the reason is because Akinator has been trained on millennial data. If you are old like me and you put into Akinator, which is text-based AI, and it's able to recognize the difference between there, and there, and which, it's pretty savvy. And so if you're in Akinator, you can notice that you can change the language very easily. You can go up to the top and you can type in 2 letters. So if you make the first 2 letters, whatever the language is, now you do have to realize that it's not SP for Spanish, it's ES for Espanol. So that kind of stymies a couple of my kids. The Akinator is much more user-friendly for kids. I've stumped it with Laura Croft. I have stumped it with Charlie Chaplin. And it just asks you questions, and then you have to click the answers. My friend Susan accuses me, actually, though, of being dumb, and that's why Akinator can't guess what I'm doing, because I don't know if something is a cartoon character or also in a video game. So Laura Croft may be in a video game. Does anybody know? When they asked me, was Laura Croft a video game character, I said no. I only know her from a movie.
Most certainly started off as a video game. I played
Did she? Is she also a Marvel? Is she a Marvel character?
No. She started off as a video game and then went to the movies.
Okay. Is she a cartoon too?
I have not seen a Laura Croft cartoon.
Okay. So see, I just hack Akinator because I'm stupid. So if you don't answer your questions correctly, then you win. So, stupid people like me, can just be excited that we can beat the AI Akinator because we don't really know the correct answer to a question. So my kids actually love the movie Big Hero 6. And it is the clip that is linked there is to show kids that AI is very specific, right? I also want my K2 kids to know that another reason why AI is not going to take over the world is because it's programmed to do one thing well and one thing only. And so for an AI device to have sophisticated object recognition, facial recognition, voice recognition, text recognition is really out there. And I do show them examples of people who are working on that. But this Big Hero 6 just shows you, and it sort of supports I have a class Alexa, and it sort of supports the fact that Alexa can do very few things well. And Big Hero 6, the Baymax, the robot, it's an empath. And so I also talk about empathy and the engineering design I'm going to talk about on the next slide. But, Baymax doesn't really do very well diagnosing what's wrong with the brother of the inventor of Baymax. And so, it's a great conversation to have with kids about how come AI has such trouble? What is it? And that gets you back into the idea of these sensors versus, our senses versus their sensors. So it's a kind of a circular thing. And, by the time my kids get into 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, they have these types of resources exposure under their belts, and they're beginning to think more nuanced ways about AI, and they're beginning to think about what it is if they were to invent AI, what it would look like. And so I also bring in a lot of things with them that are research. What's going on with the MIT cheetah robots and things like that. So that is kind of where I am with K2. Does anybody have any questions about K2 or comments or want to share what you're doing with K2 before we move into the resources for 3.5? All right, so I'm going to keep going. So you'll notice on the left, the little guy is a Cosmo robot. I love Cosmo robot. My advice to you is don't buy any other robot. Just buy a Cosmo robot. Seriously, it is the best robot I've ever had. I've had Bebot, Sphero, Evos. What are some of the robots I have on my shelf? Kubelets. I still use my WeDo 1.0. I'm transferring to WeDo 2.0 that you'll see in the background there for Brian because he bought his own to play yesterday. I also have Mindstorm robots. Brian's come and seen my kids do Mindstorms at 5th grade. And the reason why I do multiple robots is I think that hammers home the whole idea that, robots have sensors, and different robots have different sensors, which means they have different capabilities. But Cosmo is a robot that runs AI. He has object recognition. He has facial recognition. He can sense when he's about to fall off the table. He can do voice recognition. He can do all kinds of things. And so my kids in 4th grade are the lucky ones that get to use Cosmo. And when we broke for the digital learning, we were just getting into our project-based learning where they have to come up with a problem in the world that they want to solve, and they need to make a scaled model of it, a representation, so that's a big idea too, where Cosmo is going to interact with that map in some way, that representation in some way, and he's going to solve a problem. So my scenario that I show them is called Bring Out Your Forks, and I just say that our cafeteria is losing all of its forks because people are taking them back to the classroom and then they're not returning them to the cafeteria. So before we buy more forks, let's round up the forks that we have. We're a leader in these schools, so the first thing the kids say is, we should have a fork leader who goes into classrooms and collects forks. I'm like, yeah, your teachers are going to love that idea that you're going to miss an hour of instruction every day while you go collect forks. So I'm like, but if we had an AI robot that could do it, that'd be great. And so we do this whole scenario of where we do a map of the school, and we program Cosmo to go into each class, recognize the teacher, and say, Mr. Cox, do you have any forks? And you would respond appropriately, and then Cosmo would take those forks back to the cafeteria, and we would solve our problem using AI. Well, this year, the cutest project, I had several really good ones, but the cutest project was a group of girls who wanted to save koalas in Australia. And so since Cosmo was a robot, he could go into the smoky forest area and he could save the koalas. And they made a little koala bucket that went on top of it. They made this huge representation of a forest, and it was really cool. Another really neat one from this year was in cybersecurity banking. And so when you went in, Cosmo was sort of a glorified chatbot, but you would come in and he would recognize your face and he would run it against the data bot and say the database and say whether or not you were already a member of the bank. And if you were, then Cosmo would escort you to the right person you needed to talk to. And if you were not a member of the bank, it would send an alert to the branch manager to say, hey, this person is not a member of our bank. We don't really know what they're here for, and we want to just give you a heads up. And so those are some of the projects that were really cute. And then, the kids work through all of those soft skills while they're working on this kind of project. So it's a really good way for there to be student voice and choice because they can choose anything they want to work on, any problem that they want, and they work with each other and other people to figure out. The question I see from Stacy about are Cosmos still available for sale? They are. There's several ways that you can get them. If you go on to Amazon, you'll see that they're like $250 now because there are not many of them out in the market. But if you go to Ready AI, which if you go to Dave Tretzky or Yang, I can't remember Yang's last name, they are going to be able to sell you some because they have an inventory of them. But the really good news is that Digital Dream Labs is going to be, they bought all the assets for Cosmo when the company that built them, Anki, went bankrupt. And they are going to, thank you, Jay, they are going to start reproducing them and selling them. And Dave tells me that it's going to be in this fall when they're going to be made available. I love that little guy. He's amazing. The second little square there, that's a movie. I have a lot of kids in my program that are fine arts oriented, that really are into dance and drama and music and movement. And so one of the things I do is I use the Georgia Tech news feed, and I find a lot of my resources out of that. So Georgia Tech is amazing. The people at Georgia Tech are amazing. I even had a researcher, Swati Gupta, who does ethics in AI, who came to my classroom and talked to my 5th grade students. And the reason why she did it is because I shared an article out of the Georgia Tech news feed with them. And she was quoted in there as saying that she, as a female, she had trouble getting into computer science and AI. And even her own family had some doubts about it. And one of my students said, could I write her some questions I have, follow up after our activity? And Swati Gupta was so excited that she came and spoke to my class and brought 2 graduate students, and we put it on a feed for other middle school classes in our district to look at. But this article that I've linked here is about a robot that they use to create music. So I thought that tied in nicely with the first 2 songs on that first slide. His name is Simon, I think, and he plays a marimba, and he's really cool. So I like to show that. And if you are here, I want to give you an Easter egg. So is anybody in here familiar with Incredibox? If you're not, go to Incredibox. And my kids love Incredibox. I don't even know if Incredibox is AI. Jason, do you know if it's AI, or Ruth? I don't know if it's AI or not. It's just fun. And you make your own beatbox mix, and the little people on it are just so much fun. And so Simon was sort of like a robotic version of the Incredibox app. So you can do the Incredibox where you pay for it. I don't. But as you play Incredibox, it unlocks Easter eggs. That's what I thought might have been AI. I wasn't sure. I'm afraid to ask Dave, but maybe Charlotte will tell me. I don't know. So the other thing there is Quickdraw. Quickdraw is probably the best thing that I do with 3.5. The kids love it. And what's really cool is that Quickdraw helps kids understand the salient features of something. And I think for, my principal came and observed me. She's like, I can't believe you're teaching kids about salient features. And I said, but I think salient features are something that all people need to understand about everything that we do, even our interactions with people. And it's interesting to me. So if, someone were to ask me the salient features of Brian, I would say that he has dreads. But right now, if you look at him, you don't see them. So that would not be a salient feature for Brian right now, right? So what I say to my kids all the time is, you have to think about a salient feature that's going to be recognizable in all forms. And when they go onto Quickdraw, those of you who are playing with it, you make a doodle of something. And so what I say to my kids is, how does that doodle know the difference between this green pen that I've drawn and a green pea? A pod of peas, right? And if I draw it this way, is that the same as this way? And what they learn quickly is that that is not true. Like one of my kids, what I did for digital learning is I told them to go play Quickdraw, which gives you a round of 6 objects. And then I said, you're going to go back to Flipgrid, and you're going to share with everyone what your 6 objects were and how you drew them and why you think the AI recognized it or why the AI did not recognize it. And one of them, Tanner, was so upset because he drew a bat, and he drew the bat like this, a baseball bat. And he drew the bat like this, and he had the rounded pot and then the thing at the bottom. And all of the drawings, people had drawn their bats like this. So I said to him, I wonder if you drew the bat the other way, if it would have recognized it. And some of my kids really get into that, and they start actually trying different orientations and different ways to figure out whether or not the AI can recognize their doodle. But what that whole project is doing, it's creating a gigantic database of doodles. And if you want to see more about that, you can just go to Google Experiments, and they have all kinds of AI experiments that are there, including a link to Teachable Machine. And Teachable Machine, I don't know if anybody here teaches K-5, uses Teachable Machine. What I have found is that really if I just show it to them, and we do sort of a whole class little project where we teach it to do something, and I show them the features of Teachable Machine, that's the best learning I get for the time spent. My kids don't really understand this, the black box. I try to help them, clarify that, but they really have a tough time with Teachable Machine. They love it, they have fun with it, but I don't know that they really retain any of the learning behind it. It's really an interesting thing though, because when you show it a similar object, say for example, I train it to by showing it things that are green. I tell it this is a healthy vegetable, and I show it all these things that's a healthy vegetable, broccoli and green beans and all these things, and then I show it a pen and it says no, that's not a healthy vegetable. It will also show me along the bottom a confidence interval, and that's what I think is important for kids to see when they're little about Teachable Machine, is that machines do have a level of confidence with what they are able to understand. I tend to do things like show them machine learning with cats, and then show them a bunny that's sitting like a cat, and to say, look how closely these are related. How would you know if you were a machine that this was not a cat, but it's actually a bunny? And so those kinds of questions, when I ask them to think about, I think are, Teachable Machine can kind of help that. So Teachable Machine is a lot of fun. And you can use it as a simulation with even kindergarten, first and second graders, and they're just amazed. They love the picture of the cat that comes on when they actually train it. So, but they kind of get lost in the cat, or, whatever the picture is that you get when you train it, and they forget that we're actually training a machine or teaching a machine. So I'm going to go on to my next one. Sometimes people may want to keep playing with Teachable Machine.
Quick question,
This is an
April.
activity. Okay.
Just from earlier, somebody wanted to know, how many Cosmos do you have in your?
Oh, I have 7. I have 7 Cosmos. I have one that came from Ready AI, and I was originally going to try to use it with Dave's Calypso, but I ran into some hardware problems. But he now has a virtual version, which if I go into virtual teaching, that's what I'm going to be using this coming semester. And the 7 robots are divided across 2 different groups of students. So I have 21 kids that use the 7 robots in the morning, and then I have another 21 fourth graders that use it in the afternoon. So as you can imagine, the learning that's occurring with 2 groups using the same robot makes for a lot of problems and complications, and Cosmo doesn't always get it right. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, it's the best robot I've ever had. And even when Anki went out of business, my Cosmos, knock on wood, kept on working and didn't have any problems with them. So love those Cosmo robots. They connect all the time. I connect them to iPads, and it's just amazing. So this activity is one that the K2 working group came up with, and it's just a simple data collection activity. And you can do it in science, you can do it in math, you can do it anywhere that you're collecting data. It's a simple insertion of AI terminology from big idea number 3, so that kids would understand how artificial intelligence would be looking at data differently. You have an opportunity to talk about what bias is by asking them, do we have enough pictures of cats? If we wanted to train a machine to recognize a cat, what other cats would we need? Right, so we would label it, and we might sort and classify the data into all the sitting down cats. We might have laying down cats. And a kid might go, we don't have any running cats. So if a cat ran across my classroom, would our AI be able to recognize it? And so what do we need to do differently in our data set to make sure that it's a complete data set? And that also gets you into all those ideas about limitations of your data. What's missing here? What don't we have in our data set? And so the great thing that I think that's really cool about this is that you're not actually designating space for AI. And in most of the things that I advocate, I don't want teachers to teach a separate AI course. I just want them to bring their curiosity about AI and about computer science into what they're already doing, because that's when it's authentic. In elementary school, CS doesn't need to be standalone. It needs to be integrated into every discipline so that kids understand that computational thinking helps you decode words the same way it helps you decode a math problem. So I think that if people are able to know enough about computer science so that they can insert it into everything they can do, if they know enough about AI and insert it into everything they do, or even just ask questions that, when you get to the end of a lesson, ask kids, how would you see this in gaming, right? Because I found out yesterday at the esports thing that everyone's gaming but me, and I don't, So I think that kids are really interested in this. It's great motivation. And Lily, I have never had any problem with the battery life of my Cosmo or my iPads. I just leave them plugged in all the time, and they don't run out of battery. If they do, it's because of operator error, and then I sick the morning group on the afternoon group who didn't plug it in or charge it, or vice versa. So I make it a kid problem. It never becomes a teacher problem. So that's how I kind of work on that. Another activity that we do, and this one I love, this one's really funny. It's called a what? And it comes from my friend Susan Ansler-Akasam out of Pittsburgh. Now she's going to be in Seattle, Washington. But the interesting thing about this one is it really shows the difference between how machines learn and how people learn. And it really highlights, I think, the benefits of human learning above machine learning. Because what you do in this game is you get everybody in a circle and you have a stuffed animal. And say you start with a pig. And I might pass the pig to Brian, and I would say, Brian, this is a duck. And what would you say, Brian? You'd say, a what? It's a duck.
A what?
A duck.
Oh.
And once I convince Brian that the pig is a duck, he's then going to pass it to the next person in the circle, and we're going to do the same thing. Now, with older kids, you could make this really complicated and have many items going around, but the first time you do it, you just start with one. And once everyone in the circle has agreed that the stuffed animal pig is really a duck, you can make that direct connection to machine learning and say, this is how machine learns what something is. So, after you do that, you then can add a second one, and you can make it more complicated and more fun so that the game itself becomes the fun thing for students. But the debrief is about talking about how no matter how many times we show a computer a pig stuffed animal, if we told it was a duck, it would always think of it as a duck. It would never be able to turn it into a pig, which is what we as humans would know it really was. And then the interesting thing about that is that when you play it the next time with students, it takes no time at all for them to relearn something or wrong learn something, as my kids say. They call this the wrong learning game. So if I then am going to talk about how humans learn, I would say, how many repetitions did it take most of us to learn that pig stuffed animal was a duck? Brian, how many did it take you?
2.
Okay. So we would come up, we could even do math. We could say, what was the average number, right? And we might even talk about in our circle, was there learning going on at the end of our circle that made them have 1 or 2? Because what you find happens is by the time it gets to the end, they just pass it and say, this is a duck. And they say, okay. And they pass it, this is a duck, this is a duck. So we talk about how human beings can do that. And then we play this again maybe 2 weeks later. And there's so much transfer of learning that it takes hardly any time at all for me to convince them that a penguin is a hippopotamus, and to have multiple things going along, because machines can't do that. Machines don't have that transfer of learning. Each time you train a machine, you start at the basic level and you have to train it specifically for that concept. And so I think it's a wonderful activity to kind of show how, a machine will not learn faster because it's already learned something else. If you want to train a machine about cats and you've trained it on dogs, it's not going to go faster because you've already trained it one time. You have to use specific training data for every object. And I think that that's really what we want our students to be thinking about at these early ages is, what are the limitations? What are the powerful things that you can do with this technology? And the broad-based strokes of how it can fit in with everything. So I'm really trying to think about AI as inspirational, and I really try to think about it in terms of provoking my students. If you don't know about Trevor McKenzie, he's the guru of inquiry-based learning. He's fabulous, and he calls what I do provoking students. He calls them provocations. I used to call them current issues, but he says that they are provoking students. And so what I think is important is to just provoke them to think about where AI is today, but to give them that knowledge that AI is going to change so drastically in the future that it's a moving target. I love that Wayne Gretzky quote that, you don't aim for where the puck is, you aim for where the puck is going to be. And I think that that's the type of learning that our littles need to know, is that when they get older and they decide to go into a field, AI is going to be in that field. And so they need to be aware of it now so that they can adjust to all the changes when they are older. I shared last year with my kids the idea that Tesla had come up with a smart summons feature. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but you could use your phone to call your car across the parking lot. And Tesla had specific rules about how they wanted their patrons to implement and test this smart summons feature. And NBC had a video that I showed my students about them actually using it in all of the ways that Tesla had told them not to. And we had this great conversation about how and when is it ethical to put some type of technology like the smart summons feature out in the public. And I asked them to tell me where around here they thought they could do it. And by Friday, one of my third graders had said, I thought about that. And I think I would go to the Kmart parking lot because Kmart went out of business here. And that parking lot would be a great place to use your smart summons feature and practice it. And that was the best answer out of all of them. Even the fifth graders were like, oh, I didn't think about that. That's such a great idea. But they were a little bit reticent to think about autonomous vehicles. Although we got a great discussion about the AI features on many of their cars. And so a lot of them would share that their parents had turned off the lane assist because they didn't like the feeling of when you're drifting out of your lane, the wheel jerks back. So they said that basically their parents had turned off the AI features. One AI feature that they really do like is the safety feature of the camera that comes on when it senses you backing up, and then it stops you if it sees something in the camera, recognizes a bike or a person. They do like that feature. So just having them have that discussion about when is it okay to test an AI or an autonomous car feature. The end of that Tesla Smart Summons video has a person asleep in their car on the interstate. I don't know where it is, but one of my kids bravely said, well, it's much safer to have a computer than a sleepy person at the wheel. But what I shared with them was, I'm more afraid of that time when we're between some of the vehicles being autonomous and some of them being human powered, that once we get to the point where all vehicles are computer driven, they'll be talking to each other, it'll be super safe, and we won't even be needed. But I think right now when we have a combination of human driven and computer driven, that's where we, might have more issues. The other thing too is that I did one called Eyes in the Sky. And Eyes in the Sky was about how you can put an AI camera on a plane and fly over fields. And those, it's being used in California with people who are vintners, avocado and almonds. And so I asked my kids, why would those be farmers that would be, piloting this AI technology? Because over time they learned that AI is, technology is more expensive when it's new. And so they quickly knew that they have avocado everything, that they have almond everything, and their parents drink a lot of wine. So they were pretty hip to why those industries would have more disposable income. And so they really thought about how, since those were popular crops right now, this idea of using your AI camera to be able to send a message to a farmer, but to 5 farmers, like you fly one plane over 5 fields, and then you can get 5 people buying your product. And the idea is that the camera can recognize chlorophyll changes, pH changes, lots of different irrigation differences. So where the water is not as good, the soil's not as moist, and it can send a message to a farmer's phone and save them hours and hours of time, because they can go straight to the part in the field where that irrigation rupture is, instead of wasting time going up and down their fields. The other thing too I learned is that how many students I have who, even though we live in a suburban city area, they have family farms, or they have access to people in farming in another country or another state. So it was just an amazing opportunity to hear from my kids and get them to engage with stuff. And I think that those economic concepts, this idea that, supply and demand matter, the idea that, if your AI is bringing down costs, then eventually it will be more widely adopted, and that it will come down in cost. Those are big economic concepts. Like, you want kids to know that in any field. It doesn't have to be artificial intelligence. those are all concepts that you want students to leave your school being consumers in the world and knowing big economic concepts. So I try to think of myself as a sower of seeds. I'm a gardener. What I do with all of these provocations is I plant seeds in little people. And I hope these seeds are going to grow. I hope that teachers that they get in middle and high school are going to nurture these seeds and really fertilize them with more in-depth learning. But I really do think that, in the notes, you'll see there's a link or actually a row to the right, there's a link. And if you click on that, that's the Microsoft commercial where they're using AI to conserve snow leopards. So many of my kids, little kids love animals. So to think about how you could use AI to actually save a species is so important. And I think, there's all of these ways that you can use popular culture, movies, entertainment, commercials to help little kids realize that AI is everywhere. So the last thing in my slides before we'll have some questions is resources and links. So if you go to that document, and Brian, can you now see a different tab, or do I have to go in and change my tab? I think I have to go in and change my tab. All right, so now can you see my tab?
Give it a second. So Deborah, the document is part of the presentation. I just put the link to the presentation in the chat. You should be able to go to the last page. I don't see anything now, April.
No, it says I'm screen sharing, but it's not coming up. Let me go back to the.
Yeah, Jason, I'm getting ready for the Merge Cube session later on today.
Yeah, I see you making a Merge Cube. So this document is linked, the Constellations Resources. It is a link, and I see a bunch of people on it. It's a link of the resources that I use to provoke my kids. It also has pasted in it the What's Your Why for Teaching AI. One of the things I didn't talk about is that Rex exoskeleton. That is the coolest thing, and it reminded me of the esports presentation where he talked about the kid in the wheelchair who'd never been able to play sports and he could excel at esports. That Rex exoskeleton I use with my fourth graders when we're talking about identifying a problem you want to solve with your Cosmo robot. And I really hit empathy hard in fourth grade. I think fourth graders are pretty much able to, thanks, Brian. Pretty much able to recognize that there are other people in the world and that the feelings and emotional reactions that other people have to you and about you are becoming more and more important. So fourth grade is where I sink in my empathy and engineering strand. And so that Rex exoskeleton, wow, we couldn't get off that. And basically it allows someone in a wheelchair to actually give a hug. And I want that to sink in for a minute. When you are in a wheelchair, think about the quality of your hug. It's just heartbreaking. And so the Rex exoskeleton allows them to stand up and to be able to embrace and hug a full body loved one. And so when we talk about empathy and we talk about that Rex exoskeleton, it's not just about AI, it's about innovation. It's about thinking about what you can do with computing skills to make the world a better place. Hal Abelson is part of the AI for K-12 working group, and he's promoting something called computational action. And I try not to be a jerk in the sessions when I go into the chat, but I really hate it when people say, we want our K-5 students to be ready to change the world when they get older. No. We want them to know they can change the world now. With a little bit of computing skills, a kid can make an app that can change the world. And Hal Abelson is talking so much about how kids in, upper elementary school can create an app that would really change their community and by extension, other communities that have the same problem. And so I really want my kids to understand that when you think about innovation, think about a problem that you have that you want to solve, and then think about how that problem might show up in other communities. So this computational action is really important to me. I had to write some curriculum for Brian, and my curriculum is out there, as you can probably imagine. And so the 3 concepts was rubber duck debugging, computational thinking across disciplines, and computational action. Because I really think that that's something little kids, especially 3rd graders, they really believe they can change the world. Anybody got a 3rd grader, personal 3rd grader? Like, they get so affronted. Like, I've had all of my 3rd graders write to me and say, are we going to start a Black Lives Matter club? And I'm like, maybe. We're going to talk about it, definitely. Not sure what our club would or should do, but I'm open to talking about it. 3rd graders really are white hot excited about everything. If a problem is brought to their attention, they are good to go and ready to solve it. So one of the things, and I don't know, if you go onto the Robert Downey Jr., and I don't guess I can, is there a way for me to share a part of a video, Brian? Is my last gasping act before we do questions?
Yes.
How would I do that?
Let me see, because I think if you screen share.
Sharing. Okay, so I've gone out of my screen share.
And then when
so
you
now
go back,
if I go back to screen share,
you should be able to say also add audio. Let me see. That's how I use it. Different platforms, different strokes. Yeah, you can't hear that. Did you hear that? No.
All right, so can you see mine? Let me see if I play it, you can hear it.
To dreamer.
Yep.
The current state of
however,
it's like echo.
Thank you for granting access to my microphone. It's good to hear you.
Today, most avatars are basically glorified customer service reps.
Rest assured, your health is my primary concern.
I lost right when I was getting good, too.
They can answer simple questions and give scripted responses.
I love helping our customers, so I'm keen to keep learning.
Beats dealing
with automated phone lines
for sure, but it's a far cry from Mark's ultimate vision.
Hey, baby. Hey.
To create avatars that can actually
too good to be true.
Can actually learn, interpret, and the world around them like a real human. That's Spider. Some sunny moment in their mind here. She started to associate the word with the image. So maybe spider.
So I'm going to come out of that. But what I do with my kids, so that is the YouTube wanted to start streaming. So they wanted to make a big splash. So they got Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man, to talk about artificial intelligence in a series of free streaming programs. And so if you go to the resource document and you click down to the number 5, is all of the, number 4 is all of the Robert Downey Jr. episodes. You should be able to link to them directly. So far, everyone's been able to link them directly. But I just show a snippet in my classroom. And then I have this great discussion. So that guy, Gabriel, has made Baby X on his computer. And the really cool thing is that he's created a mental image of Baby X learning. And Baby X learns what a duck is. And so then he shows the Baby X a spider. And Baby X says it's a duck. And he says, so it's very much like the what that we've already played. And the interesting thing about it is then he teaches the baby to be afraid of the spider. And the baby actually cries. And again, we talked about that uncanny valley because my kids were like, why would he make that look like his baby? That's creepy. That baby is creepy. And so, we're having these real authentic discussions, as Sarah said, about what is really creepy and what is it really to be afraid of, He's actually researching how to make AI that is less fearful so that people will actually be comfortable with it and then to think about where and when you might use it. So, what's really, to me, what's startling is that I sent home in an email, I send an email after I see my kids, and I sent to their parents, the number of families that watched that Robert Downey Jr. series as a family event, as family programming, and then contacted me back, and I just had discussion after discussion after discussion about, what they were talking about at home. I brought that into the classroom and then said, what about you? What did you all have a discussion? And kids were like, no, I didn't, but I'm going to go watch it now. So, because I want to have that conversation with my parents as well. So it's sort of a little bit of a backward kind of teaching, where my kids actually are going home and they're teaching their parents about artificial intelligence. It's a really nice thing for my students because they feel very empowered, but it's also a way to get more and more adults aware of artificial intelligence. And so they're making knowledgeable decisions, and so that they're aware of these types of things that are happening ethically in our society. Those resources are free for you to use. And the way that I use them, I'm happy to talk more about, but I generally try to take snippets of things or to introduce them and then let my kids go, just like we've done today, the way you all have been off clicking and playing, I hope. That's what I do in my classroom. I kind of call them all together. Brian's been in there. It's a little bit chaotic. But if I have something I need to tell everybody, I'm like, hey, attention on deck, everybody pay attention. And usually one of my kids will like whistle or something and get everybody to pay attention. But I really and truly believe that it needs to be student driven. It needs to be authentic, and it needs to have engagement points for everyone. I don't know what you all knew or didn't know about AI. And so letting you click and interact with the media where you needed to is exactly what I do with my students. I just tell them information that I think is interesting. I'm like, oh, I want to share this with you. My last thing I'm going to say is I really do believe that these are my little friends, and I go visit a different group of little friends every day, and I look forward to seeing them, and we have fun together. So it's sort of oh, look at this cool thing I learned about today. I'm going to show it to them, and then I'm going to play, have fun with them. We're going to play, we're going to talk, we're going to think, and we may or may not do an activity around it. It just sort of depends on what they want to do. And so I think that that's a way to be inclusive. That's a way to value and honor what each person brings to the classroom and brings to the table. And so, Brian's talking about culture a lot. And I think that the culture of the classroom has to be a place where I'm not the smartest one, they're the smartest one, because I need to learn what they want to learn. And I need to provide what they need to think about and talk about. So I'm glad that you all came today. If you have any questions, I'm on Twitter, and my email is on this next slide. No, I'm now moving my picture. There we go. So that's my professional picture.
Usually a lot of kudos in the chat. We thank you so much. You did a fantastic job. This was a great session. My father's in the chat. Thank you too.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that I
good stuff.
Took some things away from it. That was just good. Yeah, so I really, and Lily, you and I have to keep in touch. And I really hope that you all will look for ways that you can insert AI into your curriculum, whatever you teach. And then also when the CS standards start rolling out, be thinking about how, AI is a part of CS, and it's the new part of CS. It's really the germane part of CS, because once you get your CS credentials, you're going to be figuring out how to make AI in every single thing we do. If it's not there already, it soon will be. And if it is there already, it's going to be more.
Thank you so much.
Everywhere.
This was fantastic.
It's like gaming.
One of the good ones. See, that's a good experience. It's definitely great. Yeah.
So anybody want to jump in and talk?
We have a
go on stage?
break now, so
we have
if you guys
time,
want to hang out in the chat, it's fine. I know David Guy mentioned that he teaches high school, and this stuff will be valuable for his kids as well.
I can imagine the discussions you'd have with high schoolers. Wow. Yeah, the two girls that did the koala example, they met out of school. They had a play date, and they had this gigantic piece of cardboard box that they turned into the rainforest, or the forest of the koalas, eucalyptus forest. And when we closed out after the COVID break, I emailed them and I said, do you want to come and get this? And Sadie was like, no, I'm gonna destroy it and make another one even better. So I was like, love that iteration. Yeah, it was a group of girls. They were fourth graders. Group of girls at fourth grade. Elise, Zadie, and who's the other one? I can't remember. But yeah, they loved it.
So my microphone, people can't hear me. I don't know. Afterwards, she jumped off and jumped back on.
What happened this morning when they couldn't hear you? I could hear you.
Funny how
that's what I did just before I presented. I shut everything down and restarted it all.
Troubleshooting, like just restart it, just refresh, just.
Exactly. Yeah, my kids have learned. I used to have those 3-cup system, but my kids learned once you went to the red cup, you just might as well be going out the door to the bathroom. Did you turn it off? Did you turn it back on? Exactly. Yeah. Okay, David. Is Denise out there?
There's Denise.
I met David and Denise at an AI symposium. Oh, there's Denise. She should have come on stage, Denise.
All right, April, I have to. I got to pop to another session. Tamara's doing something
else. I'll hang up for another minute.
Sure.
Can you answer one question before you go? There's a little green circle that says 201.
So
what is that? The number of people on the platform total?
Your screen. That's how many people are currently in this section. Yeah.
Yeah. That's people in this one. Yes. Okay. Very cool.
Peace. Thank you. Oh.
All right. Bye, Brian. Thank you so much. Throw it in the chat one
more time for. Oh, that's not it. Oh. All right.
You've got it. Otherwise, I can do it.
Here you go, Rick. Here you go, Rick.
It's a bit link AI for GT constellations.
Right. I haven't
we have
seen
a place
one,
to post more things on Hopin?
Things from the presenters after the fact to share. So. All right. Peace, everybody.
Okay. Got it. All right, any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to click out and go to the stage. Thanks, everybody, for coming.